Yo, what is going on, guys? SCJ here, back again, and it's been a minute since I last uploaded, but Happy New Year's. Hope all you guys enjoyed your holiday and have spent the new year right so far. But today I want to get back to talking about the team we typically talk about on this channel, the Brooklyn Nets. The Brooklyn Nets just recently had their 12-game winning streak ended this past Wednesday as they lost to the Bulls in Chicago, and they're now back on a 2-game winning streak after their 2 wins over this past weekend. But it felt like their loss in Chicago was one of those games from earlier in the season where the team shot poorly and fans on Twitter blamed the refs for the Nets' inability to handle business, when in reality, this was a game that the Nets could have and should have pulled out, in my opinion. One thing you see often is with the Nets, they will fall behind by a large margin early in the first half, and they'll look uninterested in the game, like they're just not into it. But then in the second half, they end up turning on the Jets and coming back, and they were able to do that in back-to-back games during their winning streak as they beat the Raptors and Pistons after trailing by their largest margins and comeback wins in the first half. But then the team appeared to underestimate the talent on the Bulls and look at them in the same light that they looked at those Pistons and Raptors teams that they staged comeback against in December. And that's simply not the case, as the Bulls have multiple players who've been voted all-stars in the past. And that mindset from the Nets resulted in a 121-112 loss in Chicago for the Nets. A big reason for that loss appeared to be how poorly the lineups, including both Nick Claxton and Ben Simmons, played together. And one thing you know about me if you've watched my other videos is that I'm all for playing small ball and or keeping Simmons as the only non-shooter on the floor and bringing Claxton in whenever you give Simmons a break. That is unless the Nets pull a trigger on trading Claxton. If you look at the Nets with lineups featuring KD, Kyrie, and Claxton while excluding Simmons, the Nets have an offensive rating of 110.58, defensive rating of 111.62, which would give them a net rating of negative 1.04. Versus lineups where KD, Kyrie, and Simmons are out there, while excluding Simmons, where they have an offensive rating of 122.44, a near identical defensive rating with 111.96, for an overall net rating of 10.48. Then if we look at the stats for only games in which all 4 of those guys played, the group of Claxton, Irving, and Durant without Simmons has a net rating of 0.65, so at least they're a positive there in the games where they've all played. And the group of KD and Kyrie, now with Simmons and excluding Claxton, has a net rating of 10.69. It should be noted that the group of Simmons, Durant, Irving, and Claxton, when all together on the floor, have a net rating of 9.94 together, but the issues start when Simmons exits the floor and Irving and Durant are out there by themselves with Claxton. If that's not a sign that the Nets need to move Claxton, bring him off the bench, and play small ball, or acquire a starting stretch 5 while bringing Claxton off the bench, or do something else than they're doing now that I'm not sure what will. Another interesting stat is that the Nets have a record of 16-4 when Durant attempts less than 20 shots in a game, pretty much showing that when the Nets play as a complete unit or team and are on the same page, it works out best for them, opposed to last year, where Durant shot 38.6% from the field in the Nets' 4 playoff games against the Celtics, where they got swept, while taking also over 24 attempts in both Game 1 and Game 4, where Irving also shot 43% in that series, while only attempting over 20 shots in one game. While we're speaking of Durant, though, I'm sure many of you are aware that Durant suffered a knee injury in last night's win against the Heat, and we'll have to see how long he's out there, which is still a huge deal regardless, as obviously he's the best player on the Nets, and he's a top 5 player in the league currently, but they also have a huge statement game against the first-seeded Boston Celtics this upcoming Thursday, and I get the feeling he'll be out for that game, and being realistic, I could see this as being a 2-week injury, but we'll see how the results of the MRI come back later today. But the Nets do have 2 easier games following the Boston matchup, as they'll play 2 teams in the race for the number 1 draft pick in Victor Wembanyama. So if they are Durantless for a long period of time or just an extended stretch, hopefully they can at least go 2-1 over the next 3 games realistically. But the Nets only play Boston on Thursday and then OKC on Sunday, so hopefully it'll be a stretch where Durant, if he does have to go down, it's at a point like this week where they'll get a good amount of days off in between their games. They will have 3 tougher games following the next 3 games, where they'll play the Thunder and Spurs following Boston, as they'll face the Suns, Jazz, and Warriors in 3 straight West Coast games before coming back to the Tri-State and playing Philadelphia, which is also another tough game. So the sooner Durant returns, the better for the Nets, obviously. They will need guys to step up, though, as we saw the Nets rest 7 of their key rotation players against the Pacers in the beginning of December, and they ended up winning that game. But they'll need Kyrie and Simmons specifically to step up, as well as Royce O'Neal, as he laid the goose egg with 0 points in their loss to Chicago this past Wednesday, but had 8 points, 6 rebounds, 6 assists, despite shooting 3 for 10 from the field in the Nets win last night, where he hit the game-winning putback layup. So they'll need him to improve his shooting and do a little bit of everything like he's typically done and clean everything up, especially like he cleaned up last night's win for the Nets. In terms of how Simmons needs to step up, though, Ben Simmons has had 9 or more field goal attempts in 5 games this season for the Nets, and the Nets are 5-0 in those games. So when Ben is aggressive offensively, good things happen for Brooklyn. Simmons only shot 4 attempts last night in the Nets' win against the Heat, so I'd like to see the timid Ben Simmons subside going forward, regardless of how long Durant is out, as it's only led to positive things for Brooklyn when Ben Simmons is aggressive. Simmons has fit this team with these 3 men, as you can see from the net rating combos here, so we will need to see the best of Ben Simmons going forward and keep improving. This stat was from prior to the Nets' 2 big wins over the weekend, and the Nets are now 12-10 in games against teams over 500. And I think a big reason for their record being so mediocre against winning teams is just because of how bad they started the season. But this stretch going forward is going to be interesting to prove if they are for real, as they've handled their business against the bad teams, as you can see here. But they've also gotten key wins over the Bucks and Cavs in back-to-back games in December. So they've proven they can beat top teams. They'll just need to see a bigger sample size, and we could really tell how the Nets will stack up against the rest of the teams in the league. Also, with how I spoke about the Nets needing a stretch 5, Myles Turner just recently turned down a contract extension to remain with the Pacers, and while I think the Nets' chances of landing him are a bit far-fetched, as it will probably require a big package of players and picks to acquire him, he's honestly the perfect piece for this Nets team if they don't plan on playing Ben Simmons as a small ball 5, because in my eyes, you can only have one non-shooter on the floor in today's NBA, and if you look at a team like the Milwaukee Bucks, for example, Giannis is pretty much always the only non-shooter on the court, even though he has upped his 3-point attempts. But it works out for the Bucks as they have guys like Brook Lopez, Bobby Portis, or even Serge Ibaka now who can stretch the floor. So the Nets grabbing a stretch 5 seems to be crucial unless they go all in on Ben Simmons as a small ball 5, in which I think the lineup of Irving, Curry, Royce O'Neal, Durant, and Simmons does have a lot of potential together. But hey, that's just me. Either way, if the Nets could do a decent job of standing pat without Durant, or hopefully he just won't have to miss too many games in general, then I think they will be fine. And I think despite their already big wins over the Bucks and Cavs in December, as mentioned before, that this upcoming stretch is very important to show if the Nets are for real or not. It's also a shame because while the group of Claxton, Simmons, Durant, and Irving have a positive net rating together, they've played a lot of losing teams over their recent stretch, which is why I think the rating looked so much better than it really might be. And that's why I wanted to see the 4 of them on the floor together to get a better look at if they'll need to make some moves come the trade deadline in February, as they've got some tougher games against playoff teams coming up. Also, Ben Simmons has just played terrific with these 3 guys, as I showed this before, and I just named them individually. So it seems that Ben Simmons' defense and distributing has been why they've excelled lately and why that net rating is so good. So we'll really see how this stretch goes for the Nets with or without Durant. I will say, though, with all of that said, I get the feeling this could be and should be different from when Durant got hurt in January of 2022 or last year, and he had to miss 20 games. And the reason I think that is because Harden had 1 foot out of the door. Kyrie was ineligible to play home games due to his vaccination status. The team is currently better coached this year than they were last year, and because of the fact that Kyrie Irving said this the other night in the post-game press conference.
You guys had a stretch in this game where you guys couldn't buy a basket, turn the ball over, but yet defensively, you guys dug in your heels and put yourselves in a position to win on that end. What does that say about the way you guys are kind of changing the DNA of this team to be winning games that way?
It just shows you that we have growth in areas of, being challenged by other teams on the road, also at home. It shows we're growing in some small areas where our communication is at an all-time high, especially when we're on the road and we understand where we are, and then just the way we execute. You saw a few in and outs from me in that fourth quarter. You look back a year ago, and I could admit this about myself, I probably would have been pissed. I probably would have minted out of it, just not making enough shots for us to get over the hump. And I think our growth as a team is just seeing some of our leaders on our team, including myself, just be poised. It's making a big difference. The shots are going to go in and out sometimes, but if we get defensive stops and we do the little things, then we put ourselves in a great chance every game. So that's probably where I feel like we're making some incredible strides in games like this where we can come out with a W and talk about it.
So I wanted to add this in right at the end of the video, as there has been an update while I was in the editing process, and Durant will miss 2 weeks at the very minimum, as he'll be reevaluated after suffering an MCL sprain to the opposite MCL than last year. And this is going to be an interesting stretch for the Nets. You got to hope that this is a bonding stretch where you can see Simmons and the rest of the team get a bit more chemistry, even though I think chemistry is at the highest it's been in years for the Nets. And I think that you also need to see guys step up and see if they can sustain a higher level of play. And I think that's really going to be interesting about this stretch. I think it's going to depend on how the Nets step up against the top teams, but I think they should be able to knock off a couple wins. And I think this is a team that is better set up for the absence of Durant than they were last year when they had Harden. And like I said earlier, he had 1 foot out the door and Irving couldn't compete in every single game. So I think this is going to be interesting, and you got to hope that there are positives that come out of this. And this is probably the best case scenario for the Nets that you could have asked for after that injury last night. In my eyes, I really just got to hope that the Nets don't also go ahead and kind of build some urgency to go and make those trade deadline moves they wanted to make a bit too early. I think you should stand pat, and I think the urgency that the Nets would show would only make teams charge them more and make them give up more. So I have to hope that this doesn't throw a wrench in what we have seen from the Nets so far, and they can continue to try and stay pat as best as possible at the top of the East in the top 3 seeds. And yeah, at the end of the day, that's just the way this is going to go. And I think you got to just hope for the best and stay positive, because we've seen this team fight. And even in a game like last night, you got to hope that they bonded and that they grew more chemistry while Durant was out for basically essentially the entire second half, and they were able to get that victory over a Miami Heat team that is a winning team with a winning record. So this is probably the best case scenario that you could have asked for if you're a Nets fan or just a fan of Durant, and we'll see what happens going forward. So anyway, guys, I do want to know what you guys think about this Nets team, any of their players, how they'll fare going forward, or just anything we talked about in the video down below in the comment section. If you like this video, then make sure to give it a like, as it helps out a lot. And if you're new to the channel and or enjoy the Nets or the NBA, then make sure to hit that subscribe button and notification bell. That way you stay up to date with all the newest content on my channel. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. I'm SCJ, and I am out. Peace.